Hello, my name is Nick Huntington Klein. I'm going to be talking to you about how economists think about incentives and the way that people make decisions. Of course, there's a lot of reasons why people make the decisions that they do, but economists like to think about things in terms of incentives. When people are trying to figure out, am I going to do this, am I going to do that, they're going to weigh the incentives that go along with each of those options, and they're going to pick the option that looks the best to them based basically on what they're going to get out of it. If I'm going to buy a candy bar or buy an apple, I'm going to consider all of the pros and cons that go into both of those options, right? They're both going to taste good, but the apple's probably better for me. The candy bar might be a little bit more expensive, but might taste even better than the apple. And those are the kinds of things that we need to weigh when we're making a decision one way or the other. So economists would say that we are going to think about the benefits of all of the options that are available to us. We're going to think about the costs of all of the options that are available to us. And we're going to weigh those two things to figure out what exactly it is that we are going to do. Another important feature of thinking about things in this way is it makes us think about what exactly are benefits and costs. A benefit to an economist is just anything that you like. If you get something good out of it, then that would be considered a benefit. It doesn't necessarily have to be a money kind of benefit or anything like that. It just means that, hey, I got this thing that I liked. I like eating the candy bar. I like hugging a friend, right? I like all of these things. These are all benefits to me. And so I would weigh them against the costs. When we're thinking about costs, we need to not just think about the monetary costs as well, but every kind of cost that goes along with it, right? If we get the candy bar, we might have to think about exercising a little bit more later. That might be a cost to us. Crucially, we have to consider opportunity costs, because when we choose one thing over another, we're not just paying the costs of getting that one thing, we're also not getting the alternate option. This is called an opportunity cost. So if I go to the store and I only have money to either get the chocolate bar or the apple, if I get the chocolate bar, not only do I have to pay the dollar to get the chocolate bar, but also I don't get to enjoy the apple. That's a cost too. A cost is what you give up to get something, right? And so if I'm effectively giving up the apple to get the chocolate bar instead, I need to consider the benefits and costs of the apple when I'm considering whether or not to buy the chocolate bar as well. All of these things are interconnected. We can do calculations about this particular kind of thing using what's called economic surplus, where we are going to compare the benefits and costs of each option, and we're going to do it in context of all of the options that we have, right? So we don't just have to consider each one thing at a time. We consider it relative to the alternative that we'd be going with if we didn't do this, right? We can't consider how much we like the chocolate bar if we don't put it next to the apple and think about that as well. So let's do an example of walking through an economic surplus calculation, which will show us how to make a decision between one thing and another using benefits and costs, and will also show us how to properly incorporate opportunity costs when we're making that decision, when we're making that calculation in our heads, or at least if we're acting as though we're making that calculation. So what I have here is an option here. So let's say we were going to go on a trip. So I'm actually about to move. So I'm right now I'm in Southern California, but very soon I will be up in Seattle. And I have a decision to make. Well, how am I going to get myself from Southern California up to Seattle? Well, I could drive. I also could fly. So those are two options that are available to me. So I want to consider in making this decision, what are the benefits of both of the options, right? Driving, you get to see the area around you, but on the flip side, you have to actually do the driving yourself. You can't sleep and relax, and also it takes a lot longer. Flying, you get there a lot faster. You don't have to worry about as much stuff, but you can't bring as many things, and also the ticket is going to be a lot more expensive, especially if I have to buy a separate ticket for every person in my family as opposed to just putting us all in the same car. So there's lots of considerations, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all those considerations and I'm going to sort of squeeze them down, and I'm going to put a number on them. It's going to let us do a little bit of math to it. Right? So then we can think about these numbers effectively as if I was offered a certain amount, it's sort of like a ranking, the higher number, the better, of course. And if you like, you can put it even in dollar terms. If I was offered $60, would I be equally happy as if I got to do this thing? If that's the case, then you would value those benefits at 60, right? If I was offered $60 to give up the sites as I drove from Southern California to Seattle, well, then I value those sites at about $60, right? So let's imagine that we've done all this work, we've thought about all the benefits and costs, and we've put together some numbers. So if we drive, we're going to get benefits of 60, but it's going to cost us 20. If we fly, on the other hand, if we're going to get the benefits of 100, but we have to pay the costs of 50. So let's keep all of that in mind. Now, we can separate these costs and benefits into what we're going to call direct costs and indirect costs and benefits and indirect costs and benefits. Okay? A direct cost or benefit is the costs and benefits that you get when you actually choose the thing. They're parts that actually happen. If you go to the store and you actually buy a chocolate bar, you actually get to eat the chocolate bar. That's a direct benefit. But you had to pay. Money had to leave your wallet in exchange for the chocolate bar. That is a direct cost. On the other hand, we have indirect costs and benefits. Indirect costs and benefits are the costs and benefits of things that did not happen. And they're flipped. So if I buy the chocolate bar, I don't get to enjoy the apple. If I'd bought the apple, that would have been a direct benefit of the apple, but I'm not buying the apple. And so it's a cost that I don't get to enjoy the apple, right? The benefit of the thing you did not choose becomes an indirect cost. It's an opportunity cost, right? Same thing on the other side, right? What are the indirect benefits? Well, if I buy the chocolate bar, I don't have to pay for the apple, right? So I would have had to pay for the apple. That would have cost me some money, but I don't have to do that anymore. So that's a benefit. That's an indirect benefit. It's a thing that's good for me that it didn't happen. It's good for me that I didn't have to pay for the apple. So let's look at our driving and flying example here. So let's start by just putting in the direct benefits and costs. So the direct benefit of driving we have here, if we drive, we get a benefit of 60. And we have to pay a cost of 20. So if we choose driving, our direct benefit is 60, our direct cost is 20. What about if we actually choose flying? If we actually choose flying, then the direct benefit of flying is 100, and the direct cost of flying is 50, as it comes from the table. Okay, but now let's choose one of the options and get both the direct and indirect benefits. So let's say that we're going to choose to drive. Okay, so first of all, what are the direct benefits and costs of driving? We've already established this. If we drive, we get the benefit of 60, but we have to pay the cost of 20. Okay, so far so good. Now how about the indirect benefits and costs? Now, what's the indirect benefit of driving? It's all the costs I would have had to pay if I'd done something else, but I'm not doing something else. I'm driving. So the fact that I don't have to pay those costs, that is a benefit to me. So I don't have to pay the 50 of flying, so that's going to be my indirect benefit. I'm going to take the indirect, the options, the benefits and costs of the other option I'm not choosing, I'm going to flip them. How about the indirect cost? Well, if I'd flown, I would have gotten the 100 benefit of flying, but I'm not going to get that benefit anymore, so that is an indirect cost. Next, I can take all these numbers and calculate my economic surplus. Economic surplus is basically how good is the option that I'm choosing, taking into account both the benefits and the costs. Economic surplus can be calculated as benefits minus costs. Okay, well, we have two kinds of benefits. We have the direct benefits and the indirect benefits. And we have two kinds of costs. We have the direct costs and the indirect costs. Let's fill those numbers in. What's the direct benefit? It's 60. What's the indirect benefit? That's 50. What's the direct cost? That's 20. And what's the indirect cost? That's 100. We add all of that up, we get 110 minus 120, so we get negative 10. The fact that this is negative means that driving is worse than flying. Because what are we really doing here? We're comparing the options of driving and flying. So if we get a negative number for driving, that's going to mean that driving is worse than flying, and so we should choose to fly. I can also tell you, if we had done it the other way, if we had chosen to calculate the economic surplus of flying, we would have gotten exactly positive 10. Because again, we are comparing driving and flying. The negative 10 here means that driving is 10 worse than flying. If we'd done the economic surplus of flying, we would have found that flying was 10 better than driving. So there's only going to be one option that has a positive economic surplus, because everything is comparative. Only one option can be the best option. That's going to be the only one that's positive, and that's the one that we're going to want to go with. All right, that's it. Thank you.